Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is the 22nd of May, 2022, and today we have a very special guest speaker from Colombia who lives in the USA, Jose Ricardo Osorio. Good morning, dear Jose.
Thank you again, Jaime, for this opportunity. Thank you, everyone. People from all over the world joining us. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much. As usual, let me share my screen. So we will be watching what we are going to do today and the following Sundays. Just give me a couple of seconds. My screen, okay. Our international meetings were born in March 2020 because of the pandemic, and now it's May 2022. So we have about more than 70 or 72, oops, wait, I made a mistake. I closed the presentation. I'm sorry, here it is. Just a minute. Okay, it's coming back. It's opening. Okay, here it is. Okay. Ricardo, could you read this first quote and tell me what your thoughts are about it, please?
Okay, the art of teaching is the art of assisting discovery. Actually, yes, I totally agree, because when you teach, you make people believe, and believing is part of discovering. So I totally agree with that phrase.
Yeah, thank you so much. Dear Irma, what about this second one, Irma?
Yes, the goal is concrete. The intention has been set, but if I don't stop and reflect, there is no point to it all. Teaching is reflective practice. Yes, that is something that I totally believe, and it was part of my teacher training years in helping other teachers to, after a class or after a moment or just revising the lesson plan, it's always like, okay, stop now, think about what you did, and most importantly, how your students reacted to what you actually did or didn't do in the class. So that helps you keep reflecting, because I honestly think that, you know, learning, it's a non-stopping process and reflective also. So yes, thank you.
That's true. Thank you so much, Irma. And what about the last one? Anybody else here in the audience? Darrell, Angela, Exxon, or Miluska? Anyone who wants to read and express his or her opinion? Okay, I'll read it. Every teacher needs to improve, not because they are not good enough, but because they can be even better. Yes, totally agree, right? We can always be better than today, better than yesterday, but not better than tomorrow. The last one, Jose Ricardo.
We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience, definitely. Reflective teaching is the way we go to grow as a teacher. I cannot grow, I cannot enhance my repertoire of techniques in the class if I don't reflect on what I do prior to teaching, while teaching, and after teaching. So,
and I guess reflection is part of our daily lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like the song by Marmalade, Reflections of My Life. Okay, you can watch all the previous international meetings in this YouTube channel. And now who is presenting after you? Well, next Sunday, we will have a Spanish online meeting. We will be talking about autismo, a very important and delicate topic these days everywhere. Then on Sunday, the 12th of June, we will have Enrique Liñán talking about demystifying language functions in ELT. Then on Sunday, the 26th, we will have our 9th roundtable talking about face-to-face, online, and hybrid classes, mental health matters, with these 4 professionals: Gladys from Colombia, Araceli from Mexico, Dennis from Ecuador, and Julio from Peru. Then on Sunday, the 17th, Claudia Vanini will be talking about using digital tools in the classroom. On Sunday, the 7th of August, our good friend from Costa Rica, Ivan Suazo, he will be talking about examining the source of our words and actions, developing a culture of peace and non-violence, skills for global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity. And next semester, we will start roundtables from different countries, and it will be Bolivia, the first one to present. We will have teachers from Bolivia, and they will be talking about teaching and learning English in Bolivia, challenges and opportunities. We will have people from Colombia, from Costa Rica, Mexico, all the countries. Okay, and who is presenting today? Well, our good friend, Jose Ricardo. Let me say a few words about Ricardo. Dr. Jose G. Ricardo Osorio is an associate professor of Spanish and foreign language specialist at Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania. He has a licenciatura in lenguas modernas from Universidad del Atlántico, Barranquilla, Colombia. He earned a master's in Spanish and a doctorate in higher education from the University of Arkansas. He has over 26 years of K-16 teaching experience abroad and in the USA. He currently teaches Spanish, foreign language teaching methods, and supervises students teaching. He has served as a chair of the Department of Global Languages and Cultures at Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania, as well as interim associate dean in the College of Education and Human Services. Dr. Ricardo Osorio has been a workshop facilitator, session presenter, and keynote speaker at numerous professional events in the USA and abroad. He's a member of the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages and the Pennsylvania chapter of TESOL. He's also on the advisory board of the Northeast Conference on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, and he's a former member of the executive board of the Pennsylvania State Modern Languages Association. So once again, dear Jose Ricardo, thank you so much for giving us part of your Sunday morning time. I know that you are a very busy man, so thank you one more time, and the screen is all yours.
Thank you so much again. I always welcome these opportunities to talk about something that is so dear to me, talking about languages, talking about teacher training. So thank you for this opportunity. As I understand, this is going to be an interactive session, so feel free to stop me and ask me questions. I may also ask some questions. Feel free to participate. Don't feel that you don't know and you don't want to talk because you feel that you don't know about the topic. No, this topic, probably you already know about the topic. About the principles. What I'm trying to do today is to give you another perspective, the perspective from the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, the research that they've done, and put a bug in your ear to see how can you take these principles. If you are in teacher training, if you are someone that train teachers, if you are someone that supervise student teachers in Latin America, student teachers teaching English as a foreign language, I would like for you to take this and see how can you put it in the context that you work at and see how you can implement it. Because as I was telling Jaime before, this is something that I have used and I can attest to how effective these principles are. So just to give you a little context as to where this is coming from, high leverage teaching practices in foreign language teaching in general, Today, we're going to focus it on English as a foreign language, but is applicable to any foreign language teaching. Came about 15 years ago when the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages was trying to create roundtables to identify key topics that should be researched further to enhance the profession. One of the committees of the roundtables that they created came up with the idea of creating the high leverage teaching practices for languages, considering that the math profession, the science profession, and also the STEM organizations were coming up with their own high leverage teaching practices. So, that was actually a project that initiated at the University of Michigan because their teacher education program wanted to revamp their teacher training. And they decided to focus on high leverage practices that their student candidates could learn to improve the teaching of any subject in the local schools. So that's how Axel decided to create a roundtable that would further come up with a research project to identify the principles or the practices for foreign language teaching. A high leverage teaching practice is a practice that any novice teacher that would be looking for a job should be able to demonstrate as part of, let's say, a job interview, or well, here in the United States, when teachers are looking for jobs, as part of their interview, they have to do a micro teaching. They have to teach a lesson, and there is a panel of people from the school reviewing what they do. So that's part of the interview. So any teacher, novice especially, should be able to demonstrate. Also, is high leverage teaching practice is a practice that brings about effective student learning. Those practices are taught, coached, and practiced. As someone that is expert in the high leverage teaching practices will coach, will teach them to the trainees, will coach them, and then will practice with them. These are not practices that you can just learn by observing. And what I'm going to do today is just an overview, because we would need at least a year, honestly, to go and dissect every single practice and go into the research and go into the specific elements of each one. So today we're just doing an overview. If you're interested in the topic, there is my email address. Feel free to contact me, and I'll be more than happy to share information with you.
Okay.
Any questions so far?
No, everything is clear. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. And how about, can you hear me well?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, good, good. Please let me know, because sometimes my sound is fine here, but it's sketchy over there. So just let me know.
Okay, I let you know.
Okay, so Richard Donato and Eileen Gleason, Richard Donato from the University of Pittsburgh, and Eileen Gleason from the University of Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which actually is part of the system where I work at Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania. She used to work, she's retired now, at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. They were the leaders of this roundtable that came up with the six HLTPs, high leverage teaching practices. I would call them from here on out HLTPs. They led, and they decided to write a book that is called Enacting the Work of Language Instruction, High Leverage Teaching Practices. So they put together all this amalgamation of research, and they created like a guide for teacher trainers that would like to revamp their teacher education programs. So at that link that I am sharing here is was sponsored by the University of Hawaii. And if you click on that link, you will have all the materials that you need. There are over 20 interviews with different movers and shakers of foreign language education in the United States, where they dissect each of the HLTPs, and they provide examples and they provide testimonials, and there are videos, and there are also materials that you can actually download. So I highly recommend that you access the material for context, or get the book from Gleason and Donato. You can get it from Amazon.
All right.
So they came up with six HLTPs. By the way, some people ask me, why 6? Why not 10? Well, this research was launched in 2017. As we speak, there are people working on probably identifying other HLTPs for foreign language teaching. So who knows, probably in 3-4 years, there are not going to be 6, but by 10, I would say. So there is always room to increase the list of HLTPs, but these are the ones that their initial meta-analysis of the research on HLTPs in foreign language teaching that they came up with. So the first one, and they are not in any specific order. It's not like number 1 has to come first and no, it's just the way that they just ranked it. And also they overlap. One HLTP builds upon another one, and so forth. There are some givens though that I will have to let you know about these HLTPs. For these HLTPs to work within a teacher education program, the teacher education program must have a mission to educate its candidates. Here we call candidates any student that is going through a teacher education program. I don't know if that's also how you call them in Latin America.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay, so each candidate, the goal is language proficiency and teaching languages in context. So that's key. If the program doesn't have that as a mission or a goal, these HLTPs may not work, because these HLTPs are based on proficiency-based instruction, standards-based instruction, and teaching languages in context, okay? So if there are programs where candidates are trained on how to teach grammar and how just to teach vocabulary and just do drills, which I know there are some programs that is the emphasis, these HLTPs may not work, but they may be still worth discussing. So the first one is facilitating target language comprehensibility. The second one is building a classroom discourse or a classroom discourse community. The third one is guiding learners to interpret and discuss authentic texts. The fourth one is focusing on form in a dialogic context through a PACE model. And I'll explain what that PACE model means. The PACE is an acronym for the model that was created a few years ago by 2 professors, one from Pittsburgh and the other one from, I think actually the 2 were from the University of Pittsburgh. The 5th HLTP is focusing on cultural products, practices, and perspective in a dialogic context. And the 6th one is providing oral corrected feedback to improve learner performance. So the first one is the target language comprehensibility. It is the goal for any program that is preparing teachers to teach, in this case, English as a foreign language, is that candidate speaks the language. At the minimum, here in the United States, we use the actual proficiency guidelines as our scale or benchmarks. I know in Latin America, you're using the European framework. So if I'm not mistaken, well, at least in Colombia, the ideal level, minimum level that candidates should attain, if I'm not mistaken, is BU2. I don't know if it's the same in Peru or in other
B2.
countries. Is that
B2.
correct?
Yeah, it's correct.
Yeah, but I
Same
actually
here.
I know that some programs do not even have a benchmark established. So here in the United States, all the programs, like for example, Shippensburg University, the program, we need to be accredited. And for accreditation, we need to demonstrate that our candidates have attained at the minimum an advanced low level. That would be the advanced low, it would be the actual benchmarks that we use, which is the equivalent to B2 in the European framework.
All right.
Minimum B2 or advanced low at the time of graduation in the language that they want to teach, unless that language is Arabic, Chinese, or Japanese, because those are considered very difficult languages. So the minimum level of proficiency should be intermediate high, which would be a B1 in the framework. Why? Because for a teacher of the language, an EFL teacher, to be effective in the classroom, that teacher has to provide target language instruction. And if the teacher doesn't speak English, that teacher may not be able to teach in the target language.
All right.
So that's why teachers' command of the target language is paramount. Is paramount. When you hear the word dialogic here in what I'm saying, is because the purpose of language teaching is, or learning is, communication, and there should be exchange of information between the teacher and the students in the target language. So that, again, if the teacher doesn't speak the language, the teacher will not be able to provide that specific element or ingredient to the learner's experience in the classroom.
Sorry, when you're talking about teachers have to have this certification or level, you're talking about university teachers, professors?
No. Any teacher, any student or candidate going through licenciatura or
all right.
They have to demonstrate language proficiency. Here we use something called the ACFL oral proficiency interview. Is a test administered by the Language Testing International. The students pay a fee. It's a phone interview, 30 minutes. They speak. And then they receive a certificate. Right. There is also for writing, it's called the WPT, but we emphasize more oral production.
Yeah.
So I don't know if in the Latin American context, you have such tests to demonstrate proficiency. Do you have those?
No, I don't guess we have it.
Okay.
I don't know. That is Peru, but I don't know Ecuador. Irma?
What we're doing in Ecuador is just using the European framework. So B2 will be one of the highest level for anybody to are searching or pursuing any activity regarding teaching English as a second language or as a foreign language.
Okay.
Yes, same thing here in Peru.
But Irma, do you have a test that your candidates must take prior to graduation to demonstrate that they attain that level?
That's the Common European Framework. That's the one that they have to take.
Oh, is that a test?
Yeah, the Cambridge exams. I guess, Irma, you're talking about the Cambridge exams, right?
Oh, the Cambridge exams, it can be, or any other instrument that the institution will have. Most of the universities, or I better say, according to the university level, then it's going to be Cambridge or, you know, the whatchamacallit, the TESOL, yeah, the one.
Okay, good.
That's the one.
Okay, good.
Okay. Trinity College, I'm sorry to interrupt. Trinity College was starting to be not as a mandatory component for graduation, but Trinity College exam, which is basically oral, was included for few, but not state universities, but private universities. I know about one in my city in Guayaquil, the Universidad Católica de Guayaquil. That was the one who included the Trinity College exam besides the Cambridge exam. So they had it, the two, results, and always using the framework as a reference.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. So yes, and then that candidate should be able to create comprehensible language input, because that's the way the students, the learners, are going to process the language, and that's the way the candidate is going to keep the students immersed in at least 90% of the time in the target language. The way the candidate or the novice teacher or the teacher, because there are some experienced teachers that could also reevaluate the way they teach and implement these HLTPs, are going to create their input more comprehensible is by using comprehensible context like visuals, gestures, objects, so the learners know exactly what the teacher is doing without having to resort to translation. I don't know what the case in other countries is, but I still talk to my friends in Colombia, and they still resort to translation. And the recent research has demonstrated that translation exercises in a foreign language classroom may not be the ideal scenario for students to actually learn the language. Translation has a place, but it has to be done with a specific purpose, but not within the realm of teaching the language for communication.
Yeah.
Then the teacher should create opportunities for learners to negotiate meaning. When I'm learning a language and I'm given by the teacher certain phrases that I can use when I don't understand something, for example, and those phrases have to be taught explicitly. Excuse me, I don't understand. Could you please repeat? What do you mean by? Okay, so if I am having a conversation with someone and I don't understand something, I can say, hey, speak slowly, I don't understand this word. What do you mean by this? Whatever word that I don't understand. That will provide the interlocutor the opportunity to provide more language, and me as a learner to continue to use the target language for communication purposes. So again, if the teacher doesn't have a good command of the language, of the target language, the teacher will not be able to provide the learners with these elements within the target language comprehensibility HLTP. Any question?
Yeah, I was thinking about the kind of students you have in your university.
Like
the ones who want to become English teachers.
Well, we have here we teach ESL in the schools. We have ESL teachers, and some of the students that I have that do their bachelor's in Spanish with certification, they later add ESL because most of them are bilingual English-Spanish.
All right.
So again, the English is taught here as a second language. Some schools, my university doesn't have an EFL program. We're actually working on that. We have international students that come to Shippensburg, but they already know English. They have to demonstrate.
Okay.
And we do provide them with some tutorials, especially for writing. Students in their master's programs and some students in the doctoral programs may need international students. In fact, I sometimes coach some of those students when they are writing their dissertations and they need help with writing, especially using, I don't know if you're familiar with APA and Chicago.
APA, no, I'm not.
The APA is like...
Yes.
Oh, well, Irma is.
Yeah, is the American Association of Psychology. They created a guide on how to write theses and dissertations. And most of programs, especially education programs or programs in the social sciences, they require people to use the APA style to write their dissertations and their thesis. So it has everything from how to cite online sources, how to paraphrase, how to create a table of contents, how to create a reference page, or everything. So some students don't have that expertise, and we provide that. So, but again, going back to your question,
All right.
what we do, the training we provide to our students, our candidates, is candidates that want to teach Spanish, French, or English as a second language in the local schools.
All right, I get it. Thanks a lot.
And these principles apply to any language, including American Sign Language.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the second HLTP is building a classroom discourse, or a classroom discourse community. The American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages have the organizing committees have come up with some standards that teacher training programs must follow and that candidates must demonstrate. One of the standards is communications. And communications, the candidates should be able to communicate in the target language using interpretive communication, presentational communication, and interpersonal communication. Here, in this classroom discourse community, the teacher should be able to also teach their learners how to use interpersonal communication. Granted, if the program, the language program, the EFL program is based on proficiency based, if that is the goal, because if the goal is not proficiency, if the goal is just a little exposure to the language, if the goal is not that the students speak the language, at the end that they will have to take a test or an oral exam to see how they did, this may not work here. And I know some programs in Colombia, especially at the high school level, proficiency is not the goal. Even those implied that they should speak it, is not the goal. It's more exposure to the American culture or the English culture, and for students to have an idea of some phrases, some vocabulary, but the communication is not the goal. There are some bilingual schools, and I know there are a few of those in Peru and Ecuador, some countries, that oral proficiency in the target language, especially in this case, English, is the goal. So this, the candidate should be able, or the teacher should be able to immerse their learners in activities of an interpersonal communication, with an interpersonal communication focus, so they can develop those skills, how to ask and answer simple questions, how to use negotiation of meaning. And that is done through pair work, group work, whole class works. And also the teacher should be considering the students' special needs, because nowadays we have whole inclusion classrooms where we may have students that are in the autism spectrum. Like I know that you're going to discuss that topic later. So it's very important for the teachers to know how to include all the students regardless of exceptionalities that they may have. It could be gifted students, it could be students with learning disabilities or learning exceptionalities. That's how we're calling them now. Instead of disabilities, we call them exceptionalities. So how to include them, and most importantly, how to train the learners to accept that they are going to listen in English all the time. English is the language of instruction, and that they should be able to communicate back at their level with the teacher in English. I don't know what is the case in Latin America in general, but in Colombia, I hear from my friends that some students are reticent to have a class all in English. They don't like a class all in English. They want to have the class half in Spanish, half in English. Is that the case there also?
No, it's not.
And I'm not talking about bilingual schools. I'm talking about a regular public school.
Well, I don't know, because I do not work in a public school, but I've always worked in private schools. So in private schools, students are eager to learn the language. So it's different. I don't know about you, Irma, in Ecuador, or Paula, or Erles, Dare,
In
Erso, Angela.
Argentina, morning, everyone.
Good
First of all,
morning, Paula Olmos. Welcome.
welcome. It's a pleasure as always. In Argentina, the situation is a little bit different because it depends on each province, the amount of English they have at school, the hours of English. I live in Cordoba, and English is compulsory from age 8, almost 9 at public schools. So they generally don't want to speak English at school. They don't, because they don't understand, because it's very difficult for them, and they start with very easy vocabulary. It is different when you go to a private institute or
Yes.
when you get access to private schools. But that's the situation in Argentina. The level, even though the level of it's very good level of English, it's very hard work for teachers to reach that level.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. Ilma?
Well, in Ecuador, we have had a long process, not with the best results, but I think we're in a good track. There is a big difference between private education and public education. But even though in public education, they apply the Common European Framework, so the students, the books and the teachers and all the materials are supposed to be going towards the goal, which is B2. Now, what's the real situation? Most of the students are not eager to learn the language because they don't see the point most of the time. But it's a mandatory component, so all the public schools in the whole country, they have to go through that result. There is a must. They do have to get a certificate and then show that certificate in order to go into college or university. Now, that's from the student's perspective. From the teacher's perspective, it was hard. It was hard, and it was a long process again, because not every single teacher working in a public environment was trained to change from an old-fashioned training way of teaching English to a more updated. So considering pair work, teamwork, considering planning the lessons in a different way, but the most importantly, keeping in mind at that time, you know, Brown and Bloom's taxonomy, and trying to put that everything in context to have a more interactive class and get better results. That took a time. I'm not in the capacity to say that we have been successful 100%, but I do believe that we are on a good track in that way. Different situation in private schools. That's, you know, English since, I don't know, 4th grade or 2nd grade, 3rd grade in elementary. So by the time that they graduated, and because it's a private school, I mean, students have the money, or the parents have the money to afford sending them abroad. So it's a different context. It's a huge difference between the two realities in the country.
Yeah, thank you, Irma and Paula. Go back to you, Jose.
It's interesting to hear that, because last year, actually, I run this same topic over 6 months with a group of teachers from Colombia. You know Jaime Jose Lobo?
Yeah, I know him.
Jose Lobo created like an online discussion group with teachers from all over Colombia. There are like at least 20 on the list, and we run this institute for 6 months. Every month we discuss one HLTP, and we're planning to do a context for candidates to video their use of the HLTPs. But anyways, through the discussion, it was determined that for the Colombian context, some of the HLTPs are a little bit difficult to implement, because again, students are reticent to use the language in the classroom, or to allow the teacher to teach in the target language, to teach in English all the time. So especially at public schools, that was also the sentiment of many of the attendees to this institute. That doesn't mean we cannot motivate students to actually see the benefit, especially now with the internet and with technology and media. There are a lot of, especially young people, that are familiarized with programs that are all in English, and they watch those programs, and they have more connections with people from all over the world. So I think there is probably now a better way to motivate students to see the reason why an English class has to be taught in English, at least 90% of the time. The American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages recommends that at the minimum, especially at the lower levels, the class should be run at the minimum at 90% of the time in the target language. It's understandable that sometimes the teacher may have to resort back to the student's native language, especially when there are students that may have some sort of learning exceptionalities, and the teacher may need to anchor certain ideas, may need to explain certain things just to facilitate a little bit the students' interpretation of certain things. But at the minimum, the teacher should be doing 90%. There are some schools where that is not possible. That is not allowed. They have to use full immersion. The full immersion for students that do not have the capability to concentrate and to focus may create some sort of disciplinary issues for the teacher. And if the teacher is not trained on how to handle students' behavior, it creates chaos. So again, there is a little bit of controversy as to if full immersion will work, especially at the levels, at the beginner levels. But the thing is to keep in mind the LGLTP is that the classroom is a discourse community where English, the target language, should be the way teachers and students should communicate, or students should communicate in. Okay, let's move to our third. Okay, let's see. For some reason, my PowerPoint is not allowing me to move, but hold on.
It always happens, my dear Jose, always happens to the best guest speakers.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Daryl.
Yes. Actually, before you proceed to the next slide, can I ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
A question,
Okay.
Daryl. Where are you from?
Okay, so good morning. I'm from the Philippines. Actually,
Oh, welcome,
it's,
welcome.
it's
dear
11
Daryl.
p.m. here, so there's really a big time difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for being there.
Yes. So, thank you very much for this opportunity. Sir, I have a question. You mentioned about the power of the internet a while ago. And with the internet that we have, actually our current situation here, in teaching, we are using the internet. And with the current situation facing, considering that we are facing the pandemic, everything is being conducted online. So how do you think this affect the HLTP2, and how can we create a community wherein we build on the discourse that you mentioned a while ago? Because talking about the current situation, the person who has the control is none other than the teacher, and everything seems to be passive in nature. How do we create a community of discourse, as what you mentioned a while ago, discourse community a while ago?
That's a very interesting question. And actually, technology has its pros and cons. My advice is, of course, in the constraints of a classroom setting, it's very difficult to imitate real life scenarios. And probably that's why students are not that open to using technology in the classroom. However, and I say this because at my university, actually, Dr. Blandine Mito, she's the French teacher. Because of the pandemic, she couldn't take her students to France as she usually does every year. She decided to have an online event with pairing students from Shippensburg with students with France. But the thing she did that actually worked was that she didn't have the students to do it in the classroom. She gave the students tasks that mirror real world tasks, and they were supposed to do those activities outside of the classroom, like when I, for example, go online and use WhatsApp to communicate with my friends. So they were supposed to send text messages, they were supposed to do video camming, and the students felt more open to doing that because it was not based on a classroom situation. It was based outside of class. The only thing that they needed to do was to provide evidence that those activities took place. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you bring this classroom discourse outside of the classroom because of the pandemic, you can actually use technology and have students get engaged in real world tasks, because this is important. The task that the students are going to do should be real world tasks. For example, I talk to friends, I use text messaging, I use voice messages, I can use video conferencing, and the topics could be open. I don't need to give them specific topics as long as they just do. If I say, for example, we're practicing oral production, and they can do that through a 1 minute video conferencing where they are talking to someone, hopefully a native speaker, about any topic of their interest. So again, bringing it to the real world may motivate students. The other, the downside to that is that I understand, especially at public schools, not all students have the capability for Wi-Fi connection. They don't have the capability to buy a cell phone that has all the, the gadgets and all the applications. I know that that may be a downside of this, but I don't know if the school has the means to provide students with the materials, the gadgets that they need to participate actively in the activity, or if they can go to a public library and use the public libraries resources. So again, when it comes to technology, there are some pros and there are some cons. You will never find the perfect setting, the perfect scenario.
Yeah,
Daryl, I
that's
don't know
true.
if I answered your question.
Darrell?
Yes, Doctor. Yes, Dr. Jose. I guess you're right. It's actually more on it. It all boils down to on the part of the teacher, on how the teacher will be flexible enough. Talking about being hybrid in giving activities, combining, the power of the internet, and at the same time, creating, combining it in real life scenarios. So I think that is what you're trying to say. So thank you so much, Dr. Jose.
No, thank you for your question, Daryl. Okay, so now the third HLTP is guiding learners to interpret and discuss authentic text. I'm assuming that we all know what an authentic text is. Do we all have the same
Yeah.
meaning of authentic text?
Yeah, just as you said before, material from movies, dissertations, movies, anything that comes from real world, not prepared for a book or a special class. Otherwise, the students will say, but teacher, I understand the listenings in the book, but I don't understand what they are saying in a commercial or in a movie or in a song. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly, yes. Authentic texts are materials that were created for native speakers by native speakers. So the language teacher, what the language teacher is going to do is going to create activities appropriate to the level of the students, but the teacher is not going to manipulate or to dilute or to water down the content of the piece of material. The idea is, again, just to create the activity at the level of the student. And also, especially teaching students how to use interpretation as opposed to translation. And that's what I was mentioning before. I know from my friends in Colombia that there are some teachers in Colombia, especially at public schools, where one of the a typical homework would be the teacher give them 10 sentences in English, and the next day the students have to bring those sentences translated into Spanish. The sentences are disconnected, they are not contextualized, the translation doesn't have any specific communication goal, it's just to keep the students busy, and probably could be how to teach students how to use a dictionary could be one of the goals. But again, using dictionary, speaking the language, to me, that goal would be like far down, that I don't think needs to be. I don't need to devote too much time in class unless I'm teaching an interpretation class where learners are given techniques on how to translate text. But I'm assuming that it would be a course for upper level advanced students, not for students that are just learning English. So again, interpretation is best. We call interpretation reading between the lines.
Yes.
Reading
Sorry,
Which
Jose,
is the
Luis
highest level
so-
of reading. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Jose and Irma. Luis Bermudez from Ecuador
Mhm.
has a comment to make. Luis,
Yes,
go
please.
on.
No, I was listening to Jose Ricardo, right? That's your name? Sorry,
Mhm.
I just joined. And what you said was interesting because listen, that was what they used to do when I was a student. I had that kind of teacher that they asked me, okay, we have these sentences and tomorrow you have to bring them translated into Spanish. And that was supposed to be a challenge.
And
So
now
you-
Google does it.
Yeah, now Google does it for you. And that is not even a challenge anymore. But that's why when I finished, when I graduated from high school, I had to take English courses, private English courses, because my English was not so great when we finished high school. Yes.
Yeah, and unfortunately that happens. Actually, we have an interpretation and translation certificate. Dr. Lesman, Rob Lesman, he's the coordinator of that certificate. And one of the activities that he has students do is to do a Google translation, and then they have to fix it because the Google translation is not 100% accurate. So they have to find what syntactic issues they have, semantic issues they have. And actually, it's a very interesting activity for students when they realize that the algorithms that now Google has, they have to say they have improved a lot, but
Right.
it's not
And
100% perfect.
And I don't know if you have realized that in some movies, they make an odd word and strange translation of phrases, idiomatic expressions, and they say caliente when we know that they are talking about sexy or beautiful. And I say, what? Do they don't have a good translator or interpreter when they are making their movies?
Yeah, you're correct. You're correct. So now the teacher guides the learners into the interpretation phase by creating pre-listening, pre-reading, previewing activities. We call them also anticipatory sets activities, where, for example, if let's assume that I'm teaching a class on football, American football, and I have a piece of text because I decided to use printed text as opposed to a video because probably it will be easier for my level, for my students' level. So I have the text and I am going to ask students what sports they play, or what would be the difference between soccer and American football. So it's a way to start giving the students an idea or whetting their appetite towards the piece of reading that they're going to do. Also, I'm going to create activities where I'm going to have my learners interpret new vocabulary. It's not translation, it's just finding renditions or finding equivalencies from words that they are going to find, especially keywords that they are going to find. Again, let's assume it's a printed text. that they're going to find in the text that I would like to see if they already have a prior knowledge about those words. I'm going to also give them techniques on how to skim for ideas, skimming through. Hey, do you think this text is about making hamburgers, selling hamburgers? Which of the two do you think this is going to be? Scanning for important details, having students find for example, I create true or false statements and they have to say if it's true, where they found it on the text. So I know that they are not just guessing, but they know exactly where it is. And also my lessons will be text-based discussion lessons, TBD lessons, where I'm going to have, again, the text. I'm going to give the students the scaffolding they need, and we're going to create discussions based on the text. Any comments about this interpretation of authentic text? Do you see this as something feasible in your context?
Anyone, please?
Yeah.
If I take only the skill of reading, I will say that it's possible in the sense of we have been training, and we have been trained in doing pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading activities. And when you mention it, reading between the lines, that is exactly one of the phrases that shows and motivates, and as teachers, myself, I push my students to start trying to get the main idea and reading between the lines, because actually it's the highest level of reading, and that's what we want. So I'm not sure about, the test-based discussion, but I will say that if we are successful with this reading between the lines exercises, and then getting higher levels of understanding for reading, even coming from a book or from an authentic material, then everything will fall in places and everybody will be able to discuss. Not easy though, because we're training the teachers, and when I'm talking about the candidates to become English teachers, very hard to do it, but not impossible in private education institutions. But yes, it's one of the highest challenges, the reading between the lines in public systems. So I don't know if Luis wants to jump in this conversation, since he does have experience in teaching English in a private school and with an IB program, I guess. Luis?
Right. I would say that really the most challenging thing, at least when you work with secondary students, is the kind of text that you're going to be working with, because I mean there are certain texts that you have to avoid. Certain topics you have to definitely avoid. And for example, something that you should not bring into your class is things about politics or religion, or maybe even sports, because I don't know in every other country, at least in Ecuador, we eat soccer and we dine soccer. At breakfast we have soccer, so we are so passionate about it. And I understand that it's pretty much the same in Colombia and Peru. So it's better not to bring those things into the class. But for example, things at least teens, they love talking about, family, believe it or not. Family, love, of course, love. Well, everybody loves talking about love. Sorry, because I'm being redundant.
No,
And
you're not.
But the text is very important. You have to be very careful on what kind of topics you bring into your class, because it is not only your students who are going to be aware of that, but believe it or not, there are other people observing you, and those are the parents, and they are very, they're very, sometimes they take this position about like, oh, they go to you and they ask you things like, why do you have to talk about that? And then you have to tell them, okay, listen, it's blah, 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 blah. So that's why I'm telling you also, you have to avoid certain things. But other, especially they are these days superheroes. If you know anything about superheroes, because that's what they see when they go to the movies. So if you know about the what they represent, if you can even bring values into your class in an indirect way. And believe it or not, kids respond to that. And it's a nice experience when it turns out the way you want it, because that's why also planning is important. What you do as a teacher before class counts a lot, and it means a lot in the end.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Irma.
Actually, Luis, you have actually mentioned something that is really important when it comes to bringing authentic texts to the class. And by the way, I use the word text in the broadest sense of the word. It's not just printed text, because a painting could be text, a piece of music could be text, picture could be text. Okay, it's not just printed material. I was using and it's an example, this article, newspaper article about American football, just as an example, but it doesn't have, and we say reading between the lines, but again, it's just a metaphor to say what the writer, the author, the composer, the painter, or the artist of this piece, of this text wanted to say. But the one thing that is really important is survey your students to know what sort of topics they are interested, topics about the culture of the language that you are teaching. Remember, because you are bringing these topics, like if you're teaching American culture, American English, if you're teaching British culture, British English, or if you have an approach to talk about the English-speaking world, you are going to bring topics from Australia, from England, from the United States, any part of the world where English is spoken as the official language. So is that what you want the students to discuss? There is actually one of the standards that the American teaching on foreign languages recommends is the comparison standard, where students compare their language and their culture with the language and their culture that they are studying. So we're talking about American football. What are the differences and the similarities between soccer and American football? So that could be a comparison there. What sort of expressions we use in football that we also use in American football, in soccer and American football. So that would be a little comparison. But it's really important to be aware of the learner's age, the learner's background, and the learner's interest before we bring. There are topics, I'm totally in agreement, there are topics that are not appropriate for certain levels or for certain ages. And there are some topics that are very appropriate. For example, if I'm teaching university students at the university level, I don't think there is that's kind of censorship as to what I can discuss or cannot discuss. But probably at the elementary school level, at the middle school level or high school level, I have to be aware as to what is appropriate and what is not. Good point.
Yes, that's true. That's
Okay.
true. And also, Jose, I guess, well, at my university, they usually say, if you are an expert on the field, okay, go on, talk about it. But if you're not the expert, avoid talking about that. And I think that is
Yeah,
a good
that's
point.
true.
And another thing is that
That's the
students love you.
wise advice.
Yes, I guess so,
Yeah.
Irma. And the other thing is they say the students love you when you know more than just English or the content of the course. And if you know mathematics or history or engineering, wow, you will be that teacher.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's move
Okay,
to
please.
our fourth HLTP. It would be focusing on form in a dialogic context through the PACE. The PACE model, there are many ways of teaching grammar, and I know, again, this based on my discussion with my Colombian friends, where they still tell me that some teachers are still teaching grammar. They always hear the rules, learn the rules. The next day you have a little quiz where you're going to fill in the blanks. And that's it. It's your rote memorization. Research has demonstrated that that sort of explicit teaching of grammar is not effective. It's not effective when the purpose is oral production, is oral proficiency. If all I want the students to just to have an idea of how the English grammar works and how it looks like, probably it will work. But if my goal is for my learners to be able to use grammar, to use form to communicate effectively in the language, I have to do something a little bit more deeper than that. So a few years ago, there was again another roundtable sponsored by the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. And out of this roundtable, this PACE model came about. And the PACE model is a way to teach grammar in context. The P for PACE stands for presentation. The teacher using the target language will give a presentation not on the rules of the grammar point that I'm going to teach. No, the teacher may create a story, or because this is a story-based teaching strategies. So the teacher may create a story or can use a real story where the grammar point is being presented. The teacher presents the story using pictures, using artifacts, just to do a little bit of more comprehensible input. Then after the presentation is done, the teacher is going to bring the students' attention to the grammar point by presenting the grammar point, usually in a written text that has to be authentic. Hey, let's assume that I am teaching the use of the auxiliaries in negative statements in English. Don't, doesn't. So I have a little piece of text where those grammar points are shown. It has to be authentic. So I have to make sure that I have something that I haven't manipulated, that is already there, that was written by native speakers for native speakers. And I'm going to bring the students' attention to that. And then through co-construction, I am going to guide the students to see, why do you think these auxiliaries are used? And why do you think the auxiliaries are being contracted? Especially when I see the cluster don't, as opposed to do not. Or if I have another example where they instead of saying don't, they say do not, or doesn't, they say does not. So I'm going to guide the students to kind of find their own rules, come up with their own rules as to why that is done. And then I'm going to give them extension activities where they are going to do real world activities where they are going to use the grammar point. So here I'm not giving the students the rules and hey, learn this, and tomorrow we're going to have a quiz. No, I'm actually in a dialogic manner. I am guiding the students through and presenting the grammar, and I'm guiding the students through the exploration of the grammar point for the students to come to their own conclusions as to what the rules are applied in that specific grammar point that I'm trying to convey. And then through the extension activities, I'm giving the students the opportunity to show me if they got it. And again, the extension activities should be real world activities. For example, I would like for you to create, using COVID, I would like for you to create a poster where you're telling people what are the don'ts of that they shouldn't take into consideration to avoid the spreading of COVID. So do not touch your face, do not get too close to people, etc., etc., etc. So that is the idea. This whole grammar concept PACE model has plenty of books and presentations, and this could take actually a whole semester. When I teach my methods class, there is a whole model that it takes me about 2 months to show this to the students. I have some videos that the students watch, and then we start dissecting the videos, and then they have to create a lesson plan where they are going to show me how they are planning to present a grammar point. Could be French, because that's what they teach, French or Spanish, or the ones that are going to teach ESL, the grammar points that they are going to present through the PACE model. Any questions, any ideas? How are you teaching grammar nowadays in your neck of the world?
Before going to that question, Jose, how many students do you happen to have in your classes usually?
It
by the way?
depends. No more than 10 or 12.
All right. That's a good number.
Yeah, it's a small program. We have a very small program.
Yeah. Okay. Just like in my university, we are very 8 or 9 or 10 students, 12 at the most.
Mhm.
Okay. Anybody else who wants to answer Jose's question? Could you say it again, Jose?
See, how you're teaching grammar? Are you still doing? And again, this is not to point fingers. It's just to have an idea of are you still teaching grammar through the textbook? Because that's another thing. Some people just use the textbook and they teach whatever the textbook is telling them to teach, fill in the blanks. I remember some activities back in the day when I was learning English in Colombia, where they said I, and then in parentheses, there was a verb in the infinitive form, then a blank, and then I needed to change and that's how grammar was taught. And the teacher would give a long presentation of the grammar rules. We were supposed to memorize those rules, and the next day we were supposed to use them.
And the big charts.
Yeah, the charts.
Okay, Marco in Peru.
Hi, good morning, everyone over there. Hi,
Hey,
Jaime.
Marco.
Hi, Jose.
Hello.
Hi, all the teachers that are now here today. I just want to answer the question given by Jose, by the speaker. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
perfectly.
Go on.
Okay, in my school, we use grammar through projects. So we use the book Impact presented by Nat Geo and the National Geographic. So students are given certain kind of images, pictures, videos that they can find in nature. The students are first presented images, ideas, not presenting the grammar itself. So the communication is what is based on first. Then with that, I presented the dialogues. What important is to present and to speak in the classroom, which is the prior important thing that we have in class. And then for example, the last class I taught was about giving suggestions, asking for suggestions. So, but deep inside, we can see that we can teach, why don't you? And then the person continues after the topics. But the thing is that they understand the topic just by communicating the content, not using the grammar. So during the classes, we continued using the topics, and at the end they will present a project which is directed by the first topic that they were talking about. So the delivery of presentation is the important thing that we have in general for all the courses.
And how many students do you have in your classroom, Marco?
That's a good question. In the school, we have 30 students in, for example, first A and B, 30 students in each classroom. But the school has 3 teachers for 2 classrooms, so we divide it into 20 students for each teacher.
All right.
On which level is that? Is that high school?
No, yeah, it's a high school, but we use it in the high school. We divide 3 teachers for 2 classes, but in primary we don't. But
So you mean like in elementary, in intermediate, advanced, something like that?
no, we don't divide it into different levels. We divide it just because we need less students for each classroom.
All right. Okay. Jimmy Riojas. in Peru?
Sorry, is that a bilingual school, a private school?
No, it is not about living school, but we are just trying
Not yet, Marco.
Yeah, we want. That's what we want.
But it's private.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is private.
Jimmy Riojas, go on. Thank you, Marco.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Hello, good morning. I like your questions about, well, my student, when I teaching grammar, I'm teaching in the public school. That is my student that are for pre-beginners. That is for A1 students. And also I teach when my students play games. Or for example, the quiz show. My students, they love the quiz show game, they enjoy. And also at the end, they show the results of the student, how that's the objective, who want to practice more, and that is one thing. And another students that are from university, there are for undergraduate students, and also I set up a project for a bioenvironment, right? So my students, when they are learning about for infinitive, for passive voice, for inversion, subjects and verbs, and well, I explain about the rules, and then they have to work in a collaborative word. Is the sentence is correct or is not correct? And then they are going to use the quizzes on, and well, and also I give them the feedback, how the student they got it, the many percent got it, the objective, how they want to practice more. And this project that is for PBL, that is for project-based learning, and also we are in the planning. And then when we finish, the students, they have to record their videos. Yes, they have to use the grammar, they have to use the vocabulary, they have to use expression, they have to use the idioms, phrasal verbs, yes, different kinds of grammar. Yeah, that is totally different. But that is the way how I engage my students in learning
you.
grammar. Yes.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. And Luis Bermudez, briefly, in Ecuador.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say that I teach grammar according to my groups. For example, if I'm teaching people who just want to learn English, I never go deep when I'm teaching grammar. I just go for the basics. But if I'm at the university level, I mean, when we have English people who want to become English teachers, then I go for something more profound. We explore grammar deeper. For example, we talk about the subjunctive, which is something that I would never teach my secondary students, for example.
Yeah, that's something very difficult to teach.
Yeah, right. Even in Spanish, it's difficult to understand.
Much more difficult. Okay, thank you so much. Go back to you, Jose.
Thank you. It is very encouraging to hear that you are using actually models that are similar to the PACE model. And as long as you're teaching grammar in context, that is actually the thing, because grammar, well, you know, there is a grammar-based teaching that actually that's how we started learning languages back in the day, where the goal was reading, and to understand reading, we needed to understand the structure, the grammar structure of the language. And so grammar was explicitly taught. You needed to memorize rules, and then you would go back reading text and translating text. So that was actually the genesis of language learning and teaching. But now research has demonstrated that learners in general need to go deeper into the learning of the grammar when grammar is presented in context through authentic text like you're doing. And the students, instead of memorizing the rules, they actually start teasing out the rules and finding out, creating their own definition and interpretation of the rules. So I'm so glad that is what is happening, and it should continue to happen that way. Okay, so let's move on to our HLTP number 5, which is focusing on cultural products, practices, and perspective in a dialogic context. This is how to teach culture, again, in context. Back in the day when I was learning English in Colombia, I remember that the culture we learned were factoid by just learning specific pieces of information about the American culture, and we would memorize them, and that's it. And then we would have a test, and the test would have at least 5 questions about when was X or Y thing took place, when did this took place, who discovered this, and that was, we just needed to regurgitate that information. Now, what this HLTP is encouraging teachers to do is to contextualize culture teaching by discussing products of the culture, practices of the culture and the intersection between the products and the perspectives of the culture, or the practices and the perspective of the culture. Give you an example. Going back to American football. In the United States, American football is the big thing, like probably soccer is in many Latin American countries. And before the games, most Americans do something called tailgating. I don't know if you know what that tailgating is, to tailgate.
No, I'm
Okay.
not aware.
Okay, so tailgate is fanatics or fans go to the stadium where the football game is taking place. They bring their cars, they bring hot dogs, hamburgers, food, but usually hot dogs and hamburgers, and they bring their grills and they bring their coolers with beer and they or sodas, because they are not supposed to drink alcohol in public. It is forbidden by law. You cannot drink in public. And they do a little party outside of the stadium.
Wow.
And sometimes you have people from the opposing team next door, and they paint their faces with the colors of the team. I remember in Arkansas, it was red and blue, and some people would do either their faces, or the men would take their shirts off and they would paint their chests with some colors of theirs, and they would do chantings, and that was prior, especially people that couldn't afford to go in the stadium because the tickets are very expensive.
All right.
So
have you ever been in any of those gatherings?
Yeah, it's crazy. So that is a practice. So that is the tailgating is a practice. Then and now I'm going to discuss that with my students. Again, through a piece of authentic material. I'm going to probably have a little article on the culture of American football. Then I'm going to discuss with my students what practices we have. If, let's say, I'm teaching in Peru, let's assume I'm teaching in Peru, I'm teaching an EFL class in Peru, and I'm going to ask the students, what practices, what rituals do we have before our team plays against another team? So
go and make noise to the hotel where the opponent team is sleeping.
Yeah, to make a list and to make the comparisons. And then I'm going to say, well, in the American culture, we have tailgating. I'll present the concept. Probably I'll present some videos where I show what people do in tailgating. I ask students to say, tell me what they are doing. And we make a list. And then we start talking about why do you think, and that's when we talk about the perspective, which are the attitudes, the belief, and the values from that culture towards that product or towards that practice. Why do you think people tailgate? Why do you think people, and that also gets my students involved in producing language at a level that probably is a little higher than the one they know, but that's the goal, so they can move forward in the continuum of learning English. I'll probably would scaffold with some words that I'm going to give them. They will use negotiation of meaning to ask me, how do you say X word in English, so they can increase their vocabulary repertoire. And again, I am presenting culture again in a dialogic manner, which is conversation in the target language. I'm not using Spanish. There may be a few things that I may have to say in Spanish to anchor, but again, as long as I'm using 90% of English in the class, it's okay. And then I'm getting involved, the students engaged in the conversation. I am providing them with cultural literacy. We're doing cultural comparisons. And then at the end, we can work on a project about culture and see if they actually understood what tailgating is, or if they can find rituals from the Peruvian culture or the Latino culture that resemble a little bit what tailgating is for the American, especially for the fans of football. because again, that doesn't apply to everyone. Not everyone in the United States is a fan. I have friends that they don't follow the Super Bowl. But the majority of my friends, in fact, it becomes part of conversations at any level. Any questions? How do you teach culture? How do you integrate American culture or British culture or culture from the English-speaking world into your classes? That is not put in the textbook.
First of all, I guess, Jose, that it helps you a lot if you have been exposed to the culture you are going to teach. If you have been very lucky and blessed to be in the USA or England or any English-speaking country, because it's not the same if you just read. But if you've been there, if you live the culture, it will be much easier. Okay, go anybody else who wants to say something? Yeah, Irma in Ecuador.
Well, I was listening to the speaker. I was, it rang a bell to me how to teach culture in, this will be a university college. Most of us have heard slangs, you know, just popular ways of speaking, phrases that will like to show an image or talk about something or a description. So what I've been doing is using Google and asking my students to go on Google and try to find the slangs that were used in or they were popular in the 1960s and then 1980s and nowadays, which are the slangs that they have been using or heard or learn about it and then compare. Not only to find out the meaning behind the phrases, the words, but also the values that have been shown along this decades and the difference. Because why am I doing this? Not only to practice, you know, the conversation, the oral production, the interaction, finding out something that may be very, very interesting for them or surprising information. But bottom line is also to be aware that the same students that were taught or in our classroom when they were back in the 70s are not the same students that are teaching right now, especially if you're going to go into elementary or high school level. So by using the slangs, most of from USA and UK have been a great tool source for me to actually incorporate cultural differences and everything related to the language. I just wanted to share that.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else before going on?
Hi, again, hi.
Go on, Marco.
Okay, what I present when we talk about culture, we have a brief look, we take a brief look at other countries' cultures and events that they do in the festivities, for national festivities, for example. And they know at least something from their cultures, from China, for example, for New Year, the United States for Independence Day, for Ireland, for St. Patrick's Day. So they take a look at something, and especially for the St. Patrick's Day, I was one there when I was in the United States, and I can tell you, in fact, what it happened, what they do. So they have a kind of brief look at all of the things that happen in the world, and they compare and they see what we do in our country. So the most thing that we do in class is to talk about our culture. So what we do, what they do, especially. So they talk about what we do in our city and in the country, and also because they don't usually go abroad, they know our culture, but what we can do is different things that we do inside Peru, in the different regions, to share ideas and in order to know what happens in our country too. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marcus. Jaime, you just mentioned something that is really important about the teacher having the knowledge base of the culture of the language that they are teaching to be able to engage students in a dialogic way.
Yes.
I don't know what is the Latin American context, but here in the United States, it is highly, we cannot make it mandatory, but it's highly recommended that our candidates do study abroad, at least for 1 semester.
Great.
So we send students to Spain, we send students to Colombia, to any Spanish-speaking country. Prior to the pandemic, it was easier. During the pandemic, we had a few problems because the school wouldn't allow students to, my university wouldn't allow students to travel, even if the host country was okay receiving students. But they have to do at least 1 semester. During their study abroad, I give them 6 tasks that they must fulfill. Out of the 6, they must fulfill at least 4. I leave it up to them which 4 they are going to do. For example, one task is engaging in spontaneous conversation with someone, a native speaker, and have a conversation about a topic that is current at the time they are in the country that they are visiting. They have to videotape the conversation. They have to analyze the speech of the person that they are talking to, and they have to analyze the content of the conversation and the words that they use as learners of Spanish to engage in that conversation. Another task, and this is based on the ones that the most chosen by the students, by the candidates. The other task is that they have to go to the market and engage in bargaining with the vendor. And they also need to videotape or audio tape the conversation to see if they could get a bargain.
Great.
Yes, there are 4. So because for our accreditation, our program accreditation, we have to demonstrate with evidence that our candidates have been exposed to the target language culture, and they know the products, the practices, and the perspectives of that culture. Not all, because you cannot, I'm from Colombia and I don't know all the cultural products and practices and perspectives, but I know some that I can very easily engage people in. And for example, I dance and I do a lot of salsa dancing, salsa demonstrations. I use it in my class. I also sing, so I bring music from Colombia and we do a lot of music, karaoke, and a lot of things. So I use my talents to engage the community in my culture. So that is the idea. So how do you prepare your candidates? This is my question. How do you prepare your candidates to teach English? Is it required that they do study abroad? Is it recommended? How do they get that knowledge base of culture?
Well, in my university, students cannot afford that. But I know that in the capital, in the city capital, Lima, some institutions, they send their candidates to study abroad and they have to spend a semester. But I'm sure that will change their brain, their ideas, their beliefs, and everything they were studying at the university. I was thinking, if English teachers in any country, in Peru, in Ecuador, in Colombia, everywhere, if they had the chance of studying a semester before they graduate, that would change their ideas about how to teach English, about what to do in their classes. And they won't do the same repetitive grammar-based classes they receive as students. So I'm sure that will help them a lot. But unfortunately, where in provincial towns like mine, students do not have the money or to do that. But I'm sure that will help them a lot. Anybody else? Jimmy Riojas?
Yes, thank you, Jaime. Jaime, well, I was thinking about for teaching culture because some teachers from the USA, they're coming to Peru and visit my school in the next month. So I was thinking about for the intercultural here in Peru. Well, maybe it could be that is for the hybrid event. I was thinking about for the hybrid event for intercultural about Peru and the USA. But I was thinking the student back to the school this week. Tomorrow they back to the school, and I started my lesson, prepare my classes for teaching about for culture. So my idea is for preparing for the event, for the hybrid event. Yes. Maybe we transmit this event on Facebook, yeah, and also prepare our students for performance, yes, for dancing, culture, speak some mother tongue maybe. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about that. Yeah, but well.
Thank you, Jimmy. Anyone else? Yeah, Irma in Ecuador.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm always speaking.
No, come on.
Mandatory component for who is trained to be teacher to go abroad. No, we don't have. I'm not afraid of saying we don't have that as a mandatory component. What can we do in order to help and supply some way that awareness of cultural difference and how it's important to include that. Most of the books, they do have different chapters. For example, holidays. I always remember holidays. That's a very popular topic in almost every book. So what I used is to include pictures and stories and short paragraphs about descriptions and what's happening in the rest of the world. That was holidays, the best option to include cultural awareness. Also, when it was related, any topic from the book to history of the women and the accomplishments that we as women have been able to get along the history of the world, that also help it. There is a small, well, not small, but there is a book called Historias de Noche para Pequeñas Niñas Rebeldes. It's book 1 and book 2, and everything, it's autobiographies of different women, all women along the books, and that has been, a good add. Now, an option to invite or to include a different cultural in my classroom. That was the time that I used to work in the private university, and we had the articulation agreements with different countries. So I had students from Japan, from France, from Philippines, UK, USA, of course, and they came into the classroom with the students in the high school, and they started talking. That not only motivated awareness of differences, but also to, improve the oral production, giving the students in high school a reason to speak and to see that there is a main reason to learn the language. So, okay, that's it.
Thank you.
That's good. And actually, technology will help if your students, your candidates can find native speakers in other countries, and they can communicate and exchange using videos from YouTube, as long as they are authentic. And you train your students, your candidates, how to use those videos in class, how to use authentic materials in class. But yeah, I have to say that is an advantage across Latin America, because there are a lot of factors and variables as to why people cannot travel to an English-speaking country to have an immersion and to have that first-hand cultural experience, and be able to go back to their classrooms and say, hey, I was there, been there, done that. I know how it happened, what was my experience. For example, spending a Thanksgiving dinner with or lunch with a family, or attending a funeral, or attending a wedding, and seeing how, or just going about your daily life, what cultural things are okay in my country that are not okay in the United States. Give you an example. In our Latin American countries, it's okay for you to walk on the street with a bottle of beer and walk it and drink it. drink
and
outside
even-
in your house. Outside in your house, you can drink, and you can, here in the United States, you cannot drink alcohol in public.
Right.
You can do it in your house if your patio is fenced in, but if you are out in public, people can see you. You are in trouble. You get in trouble. You get fined, and you could even go to prison.
Yes.
So that is a cultural practice that is okay. And I need to know as a Spanish speaking individual that if I go to the United States, I have to be careful as to.
Just a reminder, Jose, thank you so much. We still got 17 more minutes.
Okay, good, good.
And just listening to you, I was thinking it would also be cultural to be in prison, to know how you're treated.
Well, yeah.
And that you are given that phone call that
Yeah.
it's your right to make it.
Yeah, but you know, I don't want the whole immersion. Okay. Not that, probably getting sick and being at the hospital, that would be part of the, with a little, you know, diarrhea. Okay, let's finish with our last HLTP, which is providing oral corrected feedback to improve learners' performance. Some people ask me, just oral, no written? Yeah, our teachers should be able to provide also written corrected feedback. But again, since the focus is oral production, when my students are using English, I need to make sure that I can give them the feedback orally, because giving feedback in writing, it delays the process of them getting the corrected feedback. This feedback has to be meaningful and actionable. Meaningful as in, for example, I'm not going to tell students excellent. Excellent doesn't say much. Hey, I really like the way you use the language control that you use using the vocabulary that we taught in class and the verb forms or the grammar that that I told you in class. So that is specific. Saying excellent doesn't say much. Yes, it's praising, but doesn't say much. Let me see, there is something in the chat. Okay, not a question. It has to be immediate as opposed to delayed. If I do my feedback in writing, because they are talking, and probably by the time they receive the feedback, they are not going to match that feedback to something specific they said. So immediate is like by using elicitation, clarification, recast, repetitions. I'm going to bring the student to notice the mistake that they make and see if there is some uptake and if they can repair that mistake. We need to understand that errors are part of the learning process. And I understand that when we give tests to students, we tend to mark them down based on the errors that they made. There is actually a body of research suggesting that we should move away from that approach, and we should probably give students grades based on how much they demonstrate, not how many mistakes they make. I know it's culturally, it's difficult to step away from that approach, but yeah, interlanguage is something that students will show when they are learning a language, and that interlanguage is full of mistakes. And the fact that they're making mistakes is telling me that they are learning. What I do with the mistakes, what I have them do with their mistakes is another thing. That's what we need to. There is a way to do implicit versus explicit feedback. The research that it shows that we need to probably start with implicit feedback to see if they get it. And if they don't get it, I can move because this is dialogic, remember, I'm talking to them. And if they don't get it, then I can be a little bit more explicit. For example, I asked the student, oh, what did you do yesterday? And the student said, well, yesterday I go to the movies. And then you say, to see if the student brings, so I'm not telling the student what the mistake is, but I'm implicitly trying to see if he or she can notice. And if the student doesn't get it, then I can go more explicit. How do you say in English, and I can even say it in Spanish, ¿cómo se dice went in inglés? and then I can bring back the student through from an implicit to an explicit to see if the student can do the uptake and do the correction. Then hopefully the student will go and say, oh no, I went yesterday, I went to the movies. Okay, and which movie did you see? Well, I see, and then you go back, I see. So you recast what the student is saying, and then you bring the student back to the mistake. So the important thing is that the student understands where the mistake was made and why the mistake has to be corrected. Probably I'm going to make emphasis on the mistakes based on the grammar point that I'm teaching or the topic of the lesson that I'm teaching, but I'm going to probably overlook mistakes that are like, they don't change the meaning of their sentences, and otherwise the student will be corrected every other word, and that will discourage the student from speaking, from participating.
Yes, definitely.
So, and again, so this is the sixth HLTP. I don't know if you have any questions. Which of the six will be the most difficult to implement in your context? Which will be the easiest?
I guess that all of them are difficult and important. I guess it depends on the context where we live. It depends on the students we are working with. And the most important, it depends on what the teacher wants to learn to do. I remember my friend and ex-director of the language center where I work, Julio Valladares, he usually said, how many years of experience do you have, Jaime? I said, 37 years. And I say, wow, and you repeat the same class, you have repeated the same class for 37 years? And then I started thinking, do I repeat the same thing? Do I teach this or that the same way I used to teach it 10 years ago? Or maybe 1 year ago? I sometimes read in the teachers groups in Facebook, does anybody have this lesson that we did 2 years ago? So if we just repeat the same thing, well, we won't be motivated to apply these 6 HLTPs. But if we want to learn, if we want to be better than yesterday, we should start assessing ourselves. Am I doing this? Do I need to do this? So I guess everyone. But again, I would repeat, I would say that maybe culture, because I had this scholarship in culture and American society. Wow. And it opened up my eyes, and I learned so much that when I am in my class, I always remember that, and I will be more motivated to teach this or that. So again, it depends on the teacher's goals or objectives. I don't know if anybody else has a different point of view. Jesse, Wilder, Exxon, Ana Maria, Nelly, Jimmy, Irma, or Marco, or Luis? Yeah, Luis.
I was going to say that really for me the problem is when your students have these mental barriers that they have set themselves up, which are, for example, that idea that English is difficult, or this other one, which is English. I'm not good for English. It's impossible that I can learn English. So they already have these preconceived ideas, and they come to your class with them. So it is already like half the battle is being lost, because they already believe these things. And it's difficult to take this block off their minds. So for me, in any case, in any situation, that's the best thing I do. I try to see if my students come with these barriers in their minds, because we know as educators that they are not for real. These are things that they put in their minds, or maybe culture, maybe bad experiences in their English learning process in the past have put in their minds. I don't know. So that's what really, in my opinion, makes difficult to implement or to bring any new technique into my class. Because if we have students that who do not have any of these false beliefs in their minds, you can create, you can make wonders in your class, because they would be eager to learn. So for me, the most important thing is that the students believe that they can learn English, that they are ready to learn, that they are capable of learning English. So that is the first thing. And I think that when I'm reading all these HLPTs, these are great tools. These are great tools. But for me, before that, I have to tell my students that, to let them see that they are capable of doing what anyone else can. Because it's not something that is really impossible. It might be difficult, but not impossible.
Thank you, Luis. Marco Giron?
Yeah, I just want to share with you something that I am doing at my school, is to motivate students to participate in class. Because as you know, when we always say something in class or present the topic, the most knowledgeable students participate always. So I figured out that, and so for the second semester, I created these stickers, as you can see. I created for speaking, for reading.
Can you approach it to your camera?
Here.
All right. Okay.
They say listening aid.
Yeah. Okay. For the skills that, you know. So because I noticed that when the students get something from the classroom, like an award, they feel more motivated, and it has worked a lot. So more than the 80% of the students now participate. All of them want to participate, and at the end they get these stickers in their notebooks and show them to the parents, and they are all very happy about this. So they always go home with the stickers of their participation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marco. Good idea. Anyone else? No? Okay, Jose Ricardo, back to you.
Well, if you see the number 4 and number 5 are highlighted red, based on the conversation that I had with the Colombian colleagues, they determined that number 4 and number 5 will be, out of the 6, the most difficult to implement because of the culture, for example, students not being able to travel to an English-speaking country, and also grammar, because most of the grammar that is taught in Colombia is taught through the book, through whatever the book is stating. And some schools and some teachers use the book as the curriculum, and that shouldn't be the case. The book is not the curriculum, but that is the case in many schools, especially public schools, where there are not, the resources are very scarce. So the little bug in your ear that I want to put is if you're training teachers, if you can bring these HLTPs to your training and coach your candidates and practice with them on how to implement all, if not all, at least some of the ones that are like the ones that are easier for you, and see how they react to that, how they reflect on how, for example, in the use of the target language, in their own target language proficiency, in their own abilities to create a discourse, discursive classroom, their own use of their authentic text. So it's a way just to keep your candidates current with practices that will actually enhance their opportunities for their own professional scope.
Yeah, and if we do this with our candidates who are going to be English teachers, it will benefit, of course, the students too, because that's what they will do in their classes, in their classrooms.
Definitely.
Yes.
Jaime, we lost you.
Jaime is gone.
Jaime, you froze up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
maybe his connection.
but I can hear you.
Okay, yes. You froze
Oh,
up
good.
for a
No,
few
you're
seconds.
back,
You're
you're
back.
back, you're back.
You're back.
I'm back.
Yeah, we lost you, but you're back.
You thought that I was going away, but I'm not yet.
Yeah, we, you know, we got terrified.
Okay, I was asking you, Jose Ricardo, if there is another slide or that's it.
No, yeah, we're done.
Okay, so this we have 10 minutes or 5 minutes to thank you on behalf of everyone in the audience. Many people following us from different countries. Thank you so much, Jose Ricardo, because it's been very reflecting, it's been very profound. And I think that it will help us a lot with our students, not only at the schools of education, but also what we do with our students in our class. And before the other people can give their opinion, just let me remind you that no, that this is not the one. This is not the one. Let me remind you that next Sunday, wait, please, next Sunday, where is it? Yeah, I don't have it here. Oops. Well, maybe it's here. Just a quick reminder for everyone, just taking advantage of this moment. It's opening. Okay, that next Sunday, we will have this very important topic in full in Spanish. So maybe if you have students who wants to practice their listening skills, Jose, it will be 100% in Spanish. We will be talking about trastorno del espectro autista, abrazando las diferencias con amor. Okay, so now, thank you so much, Jose Ricardo, for this very deep and profound topic. I don't know if anybody else wants to say something before Ricardo says his final words in this presentation today. Irma, you want to say something?
You know me already.
The second vice president.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two things. Well, Jose was talking, especially in the last slide, the HLTP number 6. I was thinking in one of the things that I always mention in my classes for the candidates for teaching, for being English teachers. It's like we never teach books, we teach a language. And we are supposed to be making our effort to get the language as the main goal and as the main, the main goal for our students. It doesn't matter what book series they're using in public or in private. It doesn't mean if it's a very expensive or very cheap series of book, but the goal is to teach the language. And regarding what we do, yes, CLT principles, communicative language teaching principles, I guess is something that we have been working in for the last probably 15 years. But what you were mentioning, how to plan our classes and how to balance the things. I'm sure you watch maybe the movie The Mona Lisa Smile, where Julia Roberts, it's the main character, and she's actually a teacher. And I always use the scene before working only the book content, and then afterwards, the scene where she just put an image and start wondering and making the questions to the students, is that art or not? And then the students, some of them, they just go through the pages of the book looking desperate for the perfect answer. And the image that she used was not in the book. So they needed to start thinking about the concept of art and everything related to the art class. But I think it's exactly the same for any class. Teachers should use something to provoke the breaking of the patterns, the breaking of the false beliefs that they cannot learn a language, especially English. English is so hard, pronunciation is impossible, and all that stuff. But we as teachers do have to provoke our students to think outside the books, to think outside what it's been told or what they have been used to for many years. It's not easy though. It's a big challenge, but it's not an impossible, and it's a very enjoyable and very rewarding at the end. Okay, I talk a lot.
Thank you
Bye.
so much, dear second vice president.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else, please? We have time for one more person.
I would like to say, Jose Ricardo, I think you mentioned that your students are they need to go to travel overseas or to other countries to practice their Spanish, right? Your students are welcome to come to Universidad de Guayaquil. I work at Universidad de Guayaquil, and if they need, of course, when we are in our working periods, if they need any guidance, I can make the connections. Is something that if you want to consider and you want to put in your agenda, go ahead, because we will receive them with we welcome them, sorry, with open arms.
Thank you, Luis. And somebody else, one more person.
I want to add something about having authentic or native speakers in our classroom. Well, you know, I work at a school and I would never have probably someone native in my classrooms because it's just a school. But what I do is to speak English in a natural way, like I do inside and outside the classroom. So the students can address me anytime and I'm playing soccer at the food court or doing something outside the classroom, and to speak with them in English, not only with the classroom language that we use inside the classroom. Outside, it would be great to speak English all the time, and I do this with all of them. Thank you.
No, good idea, Marco. And maybe if you don't remember, Jose Ricardo, when you were presenting your plenary at Universidad de Piura 3 years ago, Marco Giron was the pet student.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
You called me.
Yes, and he did the wrap up of your presentation. You ask him, you ask the audience, what did you learn today?
Oh, yes, Marco.
Yes, you asked me, Marco, remember?
Oh my God, yes. Wow.
And I always use that. Thank you so much, because I give them this example to my students and I say, you said, are you going to ask for a volunteer? And I'm going to say what the volunteer is going to do. And you will ask someone to come here and do something. And I tell those my students, I need a volunteer, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. You just come here. You have to be brave enough to come here and do what I want you to do. Help you, and I want to thank you, Jose, for reminding this.
He didn't remember you, Marco, but now he does.
No, actually, no. Actually, your voice. I said I have heard his voice before, but
some continent, I don't know where.
Yeah.
Well, this is your time, Jose Ricardo, to say your final words today on your presentation.
Hopefully not my final words for the day, not for life.
On your presentation.
So, no, I thank you again, Jaime, for the invitation. It's my pleasure to use technology to connect with all of you. If you have an idea, if you have students, if you yourself want to visit the United States,
I will, for definitely.
Get my information through Jaime. My house is your house. I live close to Washington, D.C. I live close to New York City. So if you want to come and get materials to go back and create activities for your students, I am always available for people that really want to enhance their teaching repertoire. I may be going to Colombia in October. I submitted a proposal for the Association of Colombian English Teachers. As a copy. Actually, it's this presentation. Yeah,
great.
So, but I haven't heard from them. So if they invite me, I'll be there, and hopefully I'll visit Peru some other time, Jaime.
Please come back. Jose?
Ana Maria from Colombia, thank you for being here. And I know there was someone from the Philippines.
Yes,
we impact lives, and we make part of students' life histories, and please continue to do that.
Thank you, dear Ricardo, and thank you, Marco, Irma, Luis, Nelly, Jimmy, Exxon, Angela, Jesse, Herles, and everyone else who has been connected in Facebook Live. And well, God willing, see you next Sunday. And thank you, Jose. I'll be in your house, I promise.
Anytime.
Good. Good for you.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you,
Adios.
Jose.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you.
Bye.
Blessings.
See you.